Imagine this. You step off a stagecoach in a town you've never seen, with a man you've never met, carrying nothing but shame and a sliver of hope. That was Ruth Ann, 32 years old, reputation destroyed, future gone. And the man she came to marry? A war-broken widower who hadn't trusted anyone in 10 years. This is the story of what happens when two people who have every reason to give up choose not to. This channel lives in the heart of the frontier, where cowboys carry wounds deeper than any bullet, where women are tougher than the land they stand on, and where love is the most dangerous and beautiful risk of all. The lesson here is simple and worth writing down. Second chances are real, but you have to be brave enough and stubborn enough to walk toward them. Hit that like button. Tell us in the comments what moved you most. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. Because this is only the beginning.
You the mail-order bride? Ruth Ann turned. A tough-looking man in a leather apron stood about 3 feet away, his arms crossed, sizing her up like she was a horse for sale. I'm Ruth Ann Brennan. I'm here to meet Samuel Hartwell. Hartwell? The blacksmith spit a wad of tobacco into the dirt. Ain't seen hide nor hair of him today. He knew I was arriving. That don't mean much out here. Mail gets slow, horses go lame. Men get forgetful. He shrugged his shoulders. You might be waiting a good long while, miss. A rock settled in the pit of Ruth Ann's stomach, but she kept her face as still as stone. 10 years working as a housekeeper had taught her at least that much. You never, ever let them see you're scared. I suppose I'll wait then. She found an empty bench outside the general store, sat down and folded her hands in her lap to hide the fact they were shaking. That July sun beat down something fierce. Her dress was soaked with sweat in just a few minutes. All around her, grasshoppers buzzed and clicked in the dry prairie grass. Even sitting in the shade felt like being in an oven. A woman came out of the store, stopped, and just stared. You're the one from back east. Yes, ma'am. I'm here answering Sam Hartwell's advertisement. That's right. The woman's lips pressed together into a thin line. That's either mighty brave of you or mighty desperate. Ruth Ann looked her straight in the eye. Maybe a little of both. Something changed in the woman's expression. It wasn't exactly approval, but maybe it was understanding. I'm Margaret Sullivan. My husband and I own this store. She took a small pause. If Hartwell doesn't show up, you come on inside. I'm not about to let you die of heat stroke on my front porch. Much obliged, ma'am. Margaret went back inside, and Ruth Ann was alone again. 1 hour crawled by, then 2. The sun climbed even higher in the sky. Her throat felt like it was full of cotton. The few coins she had left wouldn't even last a week. What would she do if Samuel Hartwell never came? She couldn't let herself think about it. She had survived Boston. She could survive this. But the fear was like a wild animal clawing at her insides, digging up all the memories she had tried so hard to bury. Pantry, Charles Whitmore's hands on her, the heavy weight of the iron skillet right before she swung it, the sight of blood on his forehead, and his mother's voice as cold as a winter morning. The Irish girl attacked my son. Not a single person had believed Ruth Ann. Not the other servants, not the police constable, not one person in all of Boston society. Damaged goods. That's what they had started calling her. Damaged goods that no respectable family would ever think of hiring. So she had written 7 letters to 7 complete strangers, telling them exactly who she was with painful honesty. 32 years old, plain-faced with a sharp tongue, and carrying a reputation that would make decent women gasp and clutch their pearls. Only one man had bothered to write her back. Samuel Hartwell. Miss Brennan, his letter said, I don't give a damn about your reputation. I need someone who can work hard and speak plain. Come if you are willing. So she had come. She sold everything she owned. She crossed half the country, running on nothing but hope and desperation. And he was not here. Ruth Ann Brennan. The voice came from behind her, low and rough, like the sound of gravel sliding down a rocky hill. Ruth Ann stood up and turned around slowly. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, his face weathered like old leather. Deep lines were etched around a pair of gray eyes that looked like they had seen far too much. A long scar ran from his shoulder down into the collar of his shirt. His dark hair had streaks of gray in it, and his jaw was set hard. He wasn't a handsome man. He was something else entirely. "Mr. Hartwell." "Sam." He did not offer to shake her hand. "My horse threw a shoe about 5 miles out of town. I had to walk. That's a long walk in this kind of heat. I've had worse." His eyes moved over her face, but he wasn't judging her looks. He was looking for something else. "You're smaller than I figured. I'm stronger than I look. You'd have to be." He bent down and picked up her travel bag. "Wagon's around back. We can talk on the way." He started walking without even looking to see if she was following him. Ruth Ann stood there for just a second. She could feel Margaret Sullivan watching her from the store window. She could feel the eyes of everyone in Copper Creek on the mail-order bride and the solitary rancher. Then she lifted her chin high and followed him. The wagon bounced along a trail heading north, through miles of empty country. Mountains rose up way off in the distance. The grasslands stretched out forever in every direction, all of it brown and crackling under the summer sun. Sam drove the wagon in complete silence. A full mile went by before he finally spoke. "I ain't much good at talking." "I noticed." His jaw worked for a moment, almost making a smile. "Almost." "You always this direct?" "It saves time." "Fair enough." He flicked the reins. "Your letter said you ran into some trouble in Boston. Said something about a reputation." Ruth Ann's hands gripped each other tightly in her lap. "Are you asking me to explain myself?" "I'm asking if it's going to follow you all the way out here. The truth or the lie?" "Both." She took a deep breath. She had promised herself she would be honest. If he was going to send her away, it was better to get it over with now instead of later. "The truth is, I was a housekeeper for a rich family. Their son trapped me in the pantry one night. He tried to force himself on me." Her voice was flat and steady, the only way she could get the words out. "I hit him with a skillet. It left a scar." Sam's face did not change one bit. "The lie is that I tried to seduce him, and that I attacked him when he turned me down." She paused for a moment. "That is the story his mother told everyone, and that is the story that all of Boston believed." Silence. The wagon wheels creaked. The horses plodded along the dusty trail. Ruth Ann braced herself for him to tell her to get out. "You still have it?" She blinked, confused. "What? The skillet? You still have it?" No. Mrs. Whitmore kept it." Sam nodded his head slowly. "That's a shame. A woman who can swing a piece of cast iron that hard would be mighty useful during branding season." Ruth Ann just stared at him. "You believe me? You crossed 2,000 miles on nothing but a hope and a prayer. If you were the kind of woman to throw yourself at rich men, you would have found a much easier way to do it." His gray eyes met hers. They were steady and impossible to read. "I know what it looks like when a person is running from something they didn't cause." "How?" "The war." The word came out flat and heavy. "I fought for 4 years for the Union. I lost my brother at Antietam." He paused. "I came out west after it was all over. Built this ranch from the ground up. I lost my wife 5 years back." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. That was a long time ago now." They rode in silence for another mile. The heat felt like a heavy blanket. Sweat trickled down Ruth Ann's spine. "Can I ask you something?" she said at last. "Go ahead." "Why me? You must have gotten other letters, from women without scandals, without all these complications." Sam's jaw tightened up. "I got plenty. Most of them were from women wanting to know how big my house was or how many head of cattle I owned. They wanted to know if I could give them a comfortable life. Those just were not the right questions. They were not honest questions. He glanced over at her. Your letter was different. You did not ask what I could give you. You told me what you could offer. Hard work, loyalty, and honesty. That seemed a whole lot more important than the size of a living room. That is why I picked you. His voice got a little quieter. I have had enough of pretending to last one lifetime. I want something real, even if it is complicated. Something inside Ruth Ann's chest began to shift. It was a feeling she had not allowed herself to have in months. Hope. It was dangerous and terrifying, but it was there. I should probably warn you, she said. I am not an easy woman to live with. I always speak my mind. I have a temper. And my sense of humor has been called improper for a lady. Sounds like you will fit right in. And I do not know the first thing about ranching. The closest I have ever been to livestock is a few chickens. You will learn. What if I am hopeless at it? Sam turned to look at her straight on. There was something in his gray eyes that made her hold her breath. You crossed half a country all by yourself to marry a stranger, all because you refused to let a lie become your whole story. He paused. You are not hopeless at anything, Ruth Ann. You just have not found the right place to prove it yet. The words hit her so hard it was like a physical blow. She looked away quickly and blinked hard against the sudden burn in her eyes. That is a very generous thing to say for a man who just met me. It is not generous, it is just what I see. They came over the top of a small hill, and Ruth Ann got her first look at the ranch. It was a solid-looking cabin with smoke curling up from the chimney. There was a sturdy barn and fenced-in pastures where cattle were grazing in the summer heat. It was not a grand place, nothing like what she had seen in Boston, but it was solid and real. It is not much, Sam said, watching her face. It is beautiful. He looked at her with a sharp glance. Nobody has ever called it that before. Then nobody has been looking at it the right way. Met his gaze. A place built by one man's two hands standing strong against all of this empty space. That is beautiful, even if it is not pretty. Something in his expression changed. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. We will get you settled in tonight. Tomorrow, I will start showing you how everything works. Tonight is fine. I did not come all this way just to rest. You came all this way to nearly die from heat stroke while you waited for a man whose horse lost a shoe. He shook his head. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we work. Ruth Ann wanted to argue, but a wave of exhaustion washed over her and stopped the words. Tomorrow, then. They pulled up in front of the cabin. Sam came around and helped her down. His hands, resting carefully on her waist, were calloused and warm. He stepped back quickly. There is a room off the main house. It is yours until you decide on something different. It has a bed, a washstand, and a window that faces east. I'm in the back room by the stove. He picked up her travel bag. We will figure out all the rest of it as we go. Ruth Ann followed him inside. The cabin was clean, but it was empty. There were no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floor, no pictures on the walls. It was a bachelor's home built for function, not comfort. It felt lonely. Kitchen is right there and the pantry is stocked. I will show you where everything is tomorrow. Thank you, Sam. He set her bag down just outside a small door. He just stood there looking a little lost. I ain't real good at this, he said. It has been a long while since someone else was in the house. I am not good at it either, but I suppose we will learn together. His gray eyes, walled off but not mean, met hers. I reckon we will. He started toward his own room, but then he just stopped cold. His hand clamped down on the doorframe, his knuckles turning white. Ruth Ann saw it all unfold. The way his gaze went a million miles away, the way his jaw set like stone. His whole body went stiff as a board. like he was not even there anymore. "Sam," she said it softly. He gave no sign of hearing. "Sam." He blinked, and just like that, he was back. He let go of the doorframe, slow and deliberate. "Sorry." His voice came out all rough. "Sometimes I'm just not all here." "Does that happen to you often?" He did not give her an answer. He just stood there, taking slow breaths, pulling himself back to the here and now. Ruth Ann did not press him. She knew the look of a person haunted by a past that never asked permission to visit. "Good night, Sam." "Night, Ruth Ann." He slipped into his room and shut the door. Ruth Ann was left standing by herself in the little room that was now hers. The walls were thin, and she could hear him moving around, the scrape of a chair, the sound of water being poured, and then only silence. She unpacked her few things at a slow pace. 2 dresses hung on the wooden pegs, her brush and comb set on the washstand, and the little Bible the preacher's wife had given her. She thought about Boston, that dark pantry, the heavy iron skillet, and the blood. She thought of every hushed whisper, every door shut in her face, every single night she spent on a cot in a church basement wondering if she would ever truly feel safe again. Then she thought about Sam Hartwell's gray eyes, and how he had listened to her story without so much as flinching. She remembered the words he had spoken, stated like they were a simple truth. "You ain't hopeless at anything. You just have not found the right place to prove it yet. Maybe this little ranch was the place." Ruth Ann laid herself down on the narrow bed. A deep weariness washed over her and pulled her into sleep. Tomorrow she would start learning the ways of this ranch. Tomorrow she would show what she was made of. Tomorrow she would begin to build the kind of life she had never been brave enough to wish for. But for tonight, for the first time in so many months, she was not by herself. Through the wall she could hear the sound of Sam's breathing. It was rough at first, but then it evened out and became steady. 2 strangers under one roof, each carrying their own hurts, each on the run from their own ghosts, and both hoping the other one might just be worth the risk of trusting. Ruth Ann woke up to the sound of a crash. She shot straight up in bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. A pale gray light was seeping through the window. It was almost dawn. Another crash came from Sam's room. Then she heard a voice, raw and full of pain. "Thomas! Thomas!" Ruth Ann was out of bed and moving before she even knew what she was doing. She hurried across the main room and pushed open Sam's door. He was down on the floor, all tangled up in his blankets. His eyes were wide open, but they were not seeing a thing. His hands were reaching out for something that was not there. "Hold on, Thomas. Just hold on." "Sam?" Ruth Ann knelt down beside him. "Sam, you need to wake up." His hand flew out and grabbed her wrist, his grip like a vice. "I could not get to him. The smoke. I could not reach him." "Sam." She made her voice calm and steady. "You are in Montana. You are home now. The war is over." His eyes finally focused on hers. They were wild with a desperate kind of fear. "You are safe," she told him. "Just breathe. Take a deep breath." Little by little, the crushing grip on her wrist started to loosen. His breathing began to slow down. The wild look in his eyes started to fade. He looked at her, really looked at her this time, and she saw a wave of shame wash over his face. "Ruth Ann." He pulled his hand back and pushed himself up to sit against the wall. "I am sorry. I did not mean to. Do not you dare apologize. You should not have had to see that. I have seen a whole lot worse." She sat back on her heels, watching him. "Thomas was your brother." Sam's jaw clenched up tight. He did not say a word. Ruth Ann got to her feet and held out her hand to him. "Come on now, I will go make us some coffee." He stared at her outstretched hand for a long second, and then he took it. His palm was rough with calluses and shaking just a little. She helped pull him up to his feet. "You are not running?" His voice was quiet, almost confused. "And where would I run to? Most women would take off after seeing something like that." Ruth Ann held his gaze steady. I once hit a man with a cast-iron skillet and got called a bad name for defending myself. You really think a nightmare is going to scare me off? Something flickered in his eyes then. It was not quite gratitude. It was more like recognition. "Coffee, then," he said. "Coffee." She turned and headed for the kitchen. Behind her, she heard him take in a long, shaky breath, trying to steady himself. "Ruth Ann." She paused. "Yeah? Thank you." She did not turn back around. "Do not thank me just yet. I honestly cannot cook to save my life." She heard a sound from behind her. It was rough and completely unexpected. Sam Hartwell was laughing. It was not much, just a short little huff of a sound, but it was genuine. A small smile touched Ruth Ann's lips as she walked into the kitchen. Outside, the sun was just beginning to climb over the Montana mountains. It was going to be another scorcher of a summer day, another day filled with heat and dust and the judging eyes of strangers. But for the very first time since she had left Boston, Ruth Ann Brennan felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she had finally found the right place. The coffee was just awful. Ruth Ann stared down into her cup, then looked over at Sam. "I told you I could not cook." Sam took a big sip. His expression never changed a bit. "I have had worse." "Where at in the war? Do not push your luck now." She almost smiled. Almost. Outside, the sun was already beating down hard. You could see the heat waves rising up from the packed dirt. Ruth Ann could feel sweat starting to form on her forehead, and she had not even done anything yet. "So," she said as she put her cup down, "what is the first thing I need to learn?" Sam pushed his chair back from the table. "You eaten yet?" "I am not hungry. I did not ask if you were hungry. I asked if you had eaten." He reached up and pulled a tin of old biscuits from a shelf and set it right down in front of her. "Eat. Then we will get to work." Ruth Ann took a bite of a biscuit. It was dry and hard as a rock, probably a week old at least. "These are even worse than my coffee." "I know." Sam poured himself more of the terrible coffee anyway. "That is exactly why I need you to learn how to cook." They went outside right after breakfast. Sam walked with a purpose, all business. Ruth Ann had to take long strides just to keep pace with him. He took her to the chicken coop first. 12 hens and one rooster that looked mean as a snake. Eggs every single morning. The rooster's name is Satan. Do not you ever turn your back on him. You named your rooster Satan. He earned that name. The barn was the next stop. There were 2 horses, a milk cow he called Bessie, and a loft stacked high with hay that he said needed to be organized. "Can you milk a cow?" "No." "Can you learn?" "I can learn how to do anything." The corner of Sam's mouth twitched just a little. "We will see about that." He handed her a bucket, then he pointed over at Bessie. "Sit on that stool, grab on like this." He showed her what to do. "Pull down nice and gentle. Squeeze and pull. Squeeze and pull." Ruth Ann sat down. She grabbed on. She pulled. Absolutely nothing happened. She tried it again. Still nothing. "You are choking her," Sam said flatly. "I am not." "Yes, you are. Loosen up your grip. Let the milk flow." Ruth Ann loosened her grip. She pulled. A skinny little stream of milk finally squirted into the bucket. "There you go." She looked up at him, surprised. "That is it?" "That is it. Now you just have to do that about 200 more times." By the time she was done, her hands were cramping something fierce and her back was aching, but the bucket was about half full. Sam just nodded his head once when he saw it. "Not too bad for a city girl. I am not a city girl anymore. We will see." The morning went by in a whirlwind of new chores. She fed the chickens, she gathered the eggs, and she learned where all the tools were supposed to be kept. Sam explained everything in short, clipped sentences. He did not waste a single word and had no time for questions he figured she ought to be able to answer on her own. Ruth Ann managed to keep up, but just barely. By noon, she was soaked clean through with sweat. Her dress was sticking to her back and her hair had escaped its pins, framing her face in wild red curls. She felt like a mess. She felt more alive than she had in years. "Break for dinner," Sam announced. "Then we are riding out to check on the herd. I do not know how to ride a horse. You are going to learn today." "Today?" Ruth Ann just stared at him. "You are enjoying this, are not you?" "Enjoying what?" "Watching me struggle." Sam's face did not change, but she saw a little flicker in his eyes. "I am watching you refuse to quit. There is a big difference." His words hit her harder than she expected. They ate a cold lunch of bread, cheese, and some dried beef that Ruth Ann had to chew on for what seemed like an eternity. Sam went and saddled 2 horses while she was finishing up. When she came out of the cabin, he was holding the reins of a gentle-looking brown mare. "This here is Penny. She is patient. She will not throw you off unless you give her a good reason to." "How would I deserve it? You might kick her too hard, or pull on the reins too rough, or you might panic and squeeze with your knees when you should be staying loose." He stopped for a second. "Basically everything you're about to do. Your confidence in me is just overwhelming. Confidence has to be earned." He linked his hands together to give her a step up. Left foot in. "Swing your right leg over. Do not overthink it." Ruth Ann put her foot into his hands, swung herself up, and landed in the saddle with more of a thud than she intended. Penny shifted nervously underneath her. "Easy now." Sam's voice got low, calm and steady. "She can feel you are nervous. Breathe slow. Just let your weight settle down into the saddle." Ruth Ann took a deep breath. Penny grew still. "Good." Sam swung up onto his own horse like he was born to it. "Just follow me. Do not try to steer. Too much. Penny knows the way." They rode out of the yard and onto the wide-open range. At first, Ruth Ann held onto the reins so tight her knuckles were white, her whole body stiff with fear. But Penny was patient, just like Sam had promised. After a little while, Ruth Ann felt herself start to relax into the easy rhythm of the horse's walk. "You are doing better," Sam called back to her. "I am terrified. That is normal. Just keep on going." They found the herd down in a valley about 2 miles from the cabin. 50 head of cattle were grazing peacefully in the summer heat. Sam got off his horse and walked among them, his eyes carefully checking over each and every animal. Ruth Ann stayed put on Penny, just watching him work. "Looking for any sickness," Sam explained without even looking up. "Any injuries or signs of predators? Coyotes come down from the hills sometimes. We get wolves in the winter. What do you do if you find something wrong? I either fix it or I put them down if I cannot. You have had to do that? Kill your own cattle?" Sam straightened up then and met her gaze. "I have had to do a whole lot of things I did not want to do. That is ranching. That is just life." Ruth Ann heard everything he was not saying. The war, his wife, his brother. "I am sorry about Thomas," she said, her voice quiet. "Your brother. I am so sorry you lost him." Sam went completely still. For a second, he was just quiet. "You heard me in my nightmare this morning. I heard you calling his name, saying you couldn't get to him. There was a fire." His voice was flat, like it was coming from a long way off. "Artillery blew up our position. Thomas was pinned under a beam. I tried like hell to pull him out, but he stopped." Sam swallowed hard. "I just couldn't do it. Sam, that was 12 years ago. It shouldn't still. It should." Ruth Ann cut him right off. "It should still matter. He was your brother." Sam looked at her, really looked. She saw something break way back in his eyes. "Mary used to say that. My wife." He took a breath. "She was the only one who ever got it. When she died, I just figured I'd have to carry it by myself." "You don't have to." "Don't I?" "No." Ruth Ann met his eyes and held them. "I don't know the first thing about ranchin', Sam, but I know about carrying things on your own, and I know it don't work forever." Sam just stared at her for a long time. Then he turned his gaze back to the cattle. "We ought to head back." A storm's coming. Ruth Ann scanned the sky. It was clear blue, not a single cloud anywhere. I don't see any storm. The cattle do. See how they're bunching up? Sam swung himself back into his saddle. We've got maybe 2 hours. We need to get back and get that barn secured. They rode hard on the way back to the ranch. Ruth Ann bounced around. Something awful in that saddle. But she didn't say a word. By the time they made it to the cabin, dark clouds were stacking up on the horizon, moving in fast. Help me get these chickens in, Sam hollered. Then we'll get the horses. Ruth Ann got to moving. The wind hit 'em before they were done, howling and mean. Ruth Ann's dress was whipping around her legs while she chased that last hen toward the coop. Satan was pecking at her ankles the whole blessed time. Get inside, Sam yelled over the wind. I got the horses! Ruth Ann made a run for the cabin. The door slammed shut behind her just as the first bolt of lightning split the sky. She stood there in the dark, catching her breath, listening to the storm just rage outside. Rain hammered down on the roof. Thunder rattled the walls. The door flew open. Sam stumbled inside, soaked clean through with water pouring from his hair. Horses are in. He threw his shoulder against the door to shut it against the wind. We're stuck in here till this thing blows over. Ruth Ann looked at him, dripping wet, bone-tired, and looking more human than she'd ever seen him. I'll make some coffee. It'll still be terrible. I know. She made the coffee. They sat there at the table listening to the storm, and that silence felt different now. It wasn't awkward anymore, more like two folks just learning how to share the same space. You did good today, Sam finally said, with the milking, the riding, the chickens. I chased a chicken for 10 minutes and got attacked by Satan, and you caught the chicken, he said with a shrug. That's the part that matters. Ruth Ann wrapped both hands around her warm cup. Why does it matter so much to you? Me, proving myself. Sam was quiet for a good long while. My first wife, Elizabeth. She couldn't handle any of this life. Not the work, not the being alone, not the hard days. She left after 8 months. Your letter said you lost your wife. I did. To a traveling salesman with soft hands. His voice was full of bitter memories. She left a note saying she deserved better, deserved something easier, deserved a man who could give her pretty things instead of calluses. I am sorry. Don't be. She was right about one thing. This life ain't for everybody. It's hard and it's lonely, and sometimes you work yourself near to death just to end up right where you started. He looked straight at Ruth Ann. I need to know you won't run. I need to know you'll stick around even when it gets ugly. I've been through ugly. I made it through. Boston ugly. This is a different kind of ugly, is it? Ruth Ann put her cup down. In Boston, I was cornered and assaulted and then told it was my fault. I lost everything. My job, my good name, my whole future. I slept in the basement of a church and begged for scraps of food. Her voice got hard as iron. What kind of ugly do you have out here that you think is going to scare me? Sam Storms, hard work. Chickens. Something in his face changed. You're angry. I've been angry for months. I'm just done hiding it. Good. Sam nodded his head slowly. Angry is useful. Angry gets work done. The storm blew for 3 more hours. They talked through most of it, about the ranch, about all the work that needed doing, about the neighbors Sam hardly ever saw, and the town he stayed away from if he could help it. There's a fella named Daniel Crawford, Sam said after a bit, his voice turning dark. His ranch is about 5 miles east of here. He's been trying to buy my land for 2 years. Water rights. My creek feeds about half his pastures, and you won't sell. This land is everything I have. I built it all from scratch after the war. I'm not about to give it up just because some rich man wants more than he needs. What's he do about it? Nothing legal. He just puts on the pressure. Lets his cattle wander onto my property. Spreads tall tales in town. Just makes things hard. Sam's jaw got tight. He'll come around sooner or later once he gets word I've got a wife. To make things harder. To see what he's dealing with now. Sam met her eyes. Crawford don't like losing, and he sure don't like being told no. Well then, we've got something in common. The storm finally broke just before sunset. Ruth Ann stepped out onto the porch to a world that looked washed clean. Everything was glistening in that golden light. Ruth Ann. She turned around. Sam was standing in the doorway, framed by the lamplight from inside. Tomorrow we're going to town. We'll get you some proper clothes for ranch work and introduce you to folks. Is that necessary? It's necessary. His voice got a little softer. They're going to talk about you one way or another. It's better they meet you and see for themselves what you're made of. What if they don't like what they see? Then they're a bunch of fools. Sam paused. You impressed me today, and I'm not an easy man to impress. Ruth Ann felt a warmth creep up her neck. I milked a cow and got attacked by a rooster. And you didn't quit. You didn't complain. You didn't ask me to slow down or make it any easier for you. He stepped out onto the porch with her. Elizabeth complained from the very first day. Said the cabin was too small. Said the work was too hard. Said I didn't talk enough, didn't smile enough, didn't give her enough of my time. His voice got quiet. You haven't complained once. I've only been here one day. Longest day of my life. And you're still standing right here. They stood there looking at each other in the last of the light. Something passed between them. It wasn't attraction, not just yet. It was something more careful than that. The very first fragile thread of trust. Thank you, Ruth Ann said, her voice low, for giving me a chance, for believing me about what happened in Boston. Don't go thanking me yet. You haven't met the neighbors. She almost smiled. That bad? Margaret Sullivan is going to want to know everything. And I do mean everything. Where you came from, who your people are, why a woman your age ain't already hitched. Sam shook his head. She'll be polite about it, but she'll be digging. I can handle a little digging. I know you can. Sam turned to go back in the door. Get some rest. Town's a long ride, and tomorrow is going to be even harder than today was. That is encouraging. I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here to prepare you. He went on inside. Ruth Ann stayed on that porch for a long while, just watching the stars pop out in the darkening sky. The air smelled of rain and sage and something else she couldn't quite put a name to. Something wild and clean and a whole world away from Boston. She thought about tomorrow, about facing down a town full of strangers, about Margaret Sullivan's questions and Daniel Crawford's pressure, and all the ways this new life could crumble before it even got off the ground. But then she thought about Sam's gray eyes, the way he listened without passing judgment, the way he shared a piece of his own hurt after she shared hers. Maybe this could actually work out. Maybe she could build a real life here. Ruth Ann went back inside and shut the door on the darkness. The next morning showed up way too early. Ruth Ann was awake before the sun, her whole body protesting from the day before, only to find Sam already standing at the stove. Made coffee, he said, his back still to her. Figured you would want something fit to drink for once. She took the mug he held out and took a sip. It was surprisingly good. You will have to teach me how to do that later. Get your things on. We are leaving in an hour. The trip into town took a heap longer than Ruth Ann thought it would. Sam kept the horses at a slow walk, pointing things out as they went, telling her whose land they were on, where the property lines were drawn, which neighbors were good folks, and which ones to keep your distance from. Eliza Thornton's place is right over that ridge. She is a widow, runs that ranch all by herself since her husband passed 10 years ago. She will take a liking to you. How do you know that? Because she does not put up with fools either. They rode into Copper Creek just as the town was starting to stir. Ruth Ann saw Margaret Sullivan sweeping the porch of the general store. The blacksmith was already hard at it, with sparks flying up from his forge. And standing right in the middle of the road, blocking their way, was a man Ruth Ann had never laid eyes on. He was tall, dressed mighty fine, and a little too clean for this part of the country. He had a smile that did not quite make it to his eyes. Sam's entire body went stiff as a board. Hartwell. The man tipped his hat. I heard you finally went and got yourself a wife. Had to come see for myself. Crawford. Sam's voice was cold enough to make water freeze. "Get out of the way." Now, that is no way to say hello to a neighbor. Crawford's gaze slid over to Ruth Ann. He looked her over the same way a man sizes up cattle at an auction. "This is her? This is what you sent off for?" Ruth Ann felt her back go straight as a poker. "I am Ruth Ann Brennan." "Brennan?" Crawford's smile got wider. "Irish. I can hear it in your voice. From Boston, if I am not mistaken. You are not interesting." He took a step toward the wagon, a step too close. "A Boston Irish girl all the way out in these parts. You must have been mighty desperate to answer some stranger's advertisement." Sam moved before Ruth Ann could even think to say a word. He was down from that wagon and right in Crawford's face in one smooth motion. "You say one more word about my wife, I dare you." The smile finally vanished from Crawford's face. "Be careful, Hartwell. That temper of yours is going to get you in real trouble one of these days. So will that mouth of yours." The two men just stood there, squared off, the air between them thick with tension. Ruth Ann climbed down from the wagon and walked right between them. "Mr. Crawford." Her voice was perfectly pleasant. "And cold as ice. I am sure you have somewhere else you need to be. Please do not let us keep you." Crawford looked down at her. Something in his eyes changed. Maybe it was surprise, or maybe he was sizing her up all over again. "She has got some fire in her," he said to Sam. "I will give you that. She is not yours to be giving anything to." Sam had not budged an inch, had not relaxed one bit. "Now get out of my way." Crawford tipped his hat one more time. "We will be talking soon, Hartwell, about those water rights. Now that you have a wife to think about, maybe you will be a little more reasonable." With that, he turned and walked away. Sam just stood there for a long minute, breathing hard. Then he finally turned to Ruth Ann. "You should not have gotten in the middle of that. You should not have let him get a rise out of you. He was insulting you, and I can handle insults." Ruth Ann met his gaze head on. "I have been handling insults my entire life. What I cannot handle is you getting into a brawl on my account and making everything worse." Sam just stared at her. Then slowly his shoulders slumped a little. "You are right. I know I am right. That does not mean I had to like hearing it. You had better get used to it." Ruth Ann turned and started walking toward the general store. "Now, are we going to do some shopping? Or are we just going to stand here in the street all day long?" Sam almost cracked a smile. "Almost. Shopping," he said. "Lord, help me." They walked into the store together. Margaret Sullivan was there waiting. Margaret Sullivan looked Ruth Ann up and down like she was a horse she was thinking about buying. "So, you are the one?" "I am the one. From Boston, I heard." "That is right." Margaret's eyes got narrow. "What would bring a Boston woman all this way out to Montana? You must have been running from something." Ruth Ann felt Sam get tense right next to her. She put a hand on his arm. "Easy now. I was running toward something, Mrs. Sullivan. A new life. A chance to start fresh." "Humph." Margaret did not look like she believed a word of it. "We will just see about that." She turned around and vanished into the back of the store. Ruth Ann let out a long breath she did not even realize she was holding. "Well, that went well," Sam muttered under his breath. "Did it? She did not run you off. I suppose that is something." They spent a whole hour in that store. Ruth Ann picked out some work dresses, a pair of sturdy boots, and a hat to keep the sun off her face. Sam paid for it all without saying a word. His jaw set tight every single time Margaret glanced in their direction. When they finally stepped back out into the daylight, Ruth Ann's arms were loaded down with packages and her head was spinning. Is everybody in this town so suspicious? Most of them are. Sam took a few of the packages from her. They will come around eventually. How eventually? Oh, give it a year. A year? Maybe two. Ruth Ann almost let out a laugh. Almost. They were busy loading up the wagon when a woman's voice called out to them. "Sam Hartwell." Is that a wife I see over there? Ruth Ann turned around. A woman who looked to be in her 50s was walking straight toward them, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and a face that was weathered but kind. She moved like a person who had spent her whole life working hard and was not about to stop any time soon. Eliza. Sam's voice softened just a little. This is Ruth Ann. Eliza Thornton. She has the ranch just north of ours. The widow who runs her place all by herself. Ruth Ann reached out her hand. Sam told me about you. Eliza's handshake was firm and strong. Did he now? And what exactly did he say? That you do not put up with fools. Eliza laughed. It was a real laugh, full and open. That is the God's honest truth. And what about you? Do you put up with fools? Not anymore, I do not. Something flashed in Eliza's eyes. It looked like approval. Good. You are going to need that spirit out here. She looked over at Sam. Crawford was sniffing around earlier. I saw him talking to the blacksmith, asking some questions. Sam's face got dark. What kind of questions? About your water, about your new wife, about whether you might be ready to sell now that you have someone else to worry about. I'm not selling, I know that, but he does not. Eliza lowered her voice. You watch your back, Sam. Crawford has been getting more and more desperate. He lost 300 head of cattle in the drought last month. He needs your water, and desperate men do desperate things. Let him try something. That is exactly what I'm afraid of. Eliza turned back to Ruth Ann. You watch him, too. Crawford has a silver tongue but a heart as black as coal. He will try to get to Sam through you if he thinks he can. He already tried, and I told him to go find somewhere else to be. Eliza smiled. I like her, Sam. Her. Do not go and break this one. She walked off before Sam even had a chance to answer. The ride home was quiet. Ruth Ann could feel the tension coming off of Sam in waves. She could see it in how straight his shoulders were and the way his hands were gripping the reins. You are worried about Crawford. I am always worried about Crawford. What has he done before? Sam did not say anything for a long moment. Last spring, somebody cut my fence line and let 30 head of my cattle wander right onto Crawford's property. He claimed they were just strays, said they had been on his land for weeks. It took me a month to get them back, and to this day I'm not sure I got all of them. You think he did it? I cannot prove it, but yes, I think he did it. What about the law? Sam let out a bitter laugh. The sheriff is Crawford's own cousin. What do you think? Ruth Ann felt a chill go through her despite the afternoon heat. So he can just do whatever he wants, as long as he is careful about it, and as long as nobody can prove anything. Sam just shook his head. That is why I need this ranch running right. I need the herd to be healthy. I need everything in perfect order, so when he comes after me again, I will be able to withstand it. And me? Where do I fit into all this? Sam glanced over at her. You fit in wherever you decide to fit in. I am not going to tell you what to do, Ruth Ann. I am just telling you exactly what we are up against. They pulled into the ranch just as the sun was going down. Ruth Ann helped Sam unload the supplies from the wagon, and they ate a quiet supper of bread and a stew she had somehow managed not to burn. That night, as she lay in her narrow bed, Ruth Ann listened to the deep silence of the Montana prairie and thought long and hard about what she had gotten herself into. Crawford, the drought, the suspicious folks in town, and a husband who still flinched if she moved too quickly, who still woke up, screaming out his brother's name. This life was tougher than she ever figured. In some ways, it was a harder row to hoe than Boston, but it was honest. It was real, and that meant a whole lot. 3 weeks rolled by. Ruth Ann got the hang of cooking meals that didn't taste like they were boiled in a boot. She figured out how to ride a horse without looking like a sack of loose potatoes. She learned which hens were good company and which ones would try to peck your eyes right out of your head. She was learning Sam, too. She learned he was up before the sun every single morning, no matter how late he'd worked the night before. She learned that he whispered to the horses when he figured nobody was around to hear. They were gentle words she could never quite catch. She learned he kept a little wooden box tucked under his bed. One time, when he thought she was sound asleep, she saw him open it up and hold whatever was inside. It looked like a ribbon, maybe a keepsake from someone else. It could have been from his wife, Elizabeth, or maybe his brother. She never asked. Some hurts are best left untouched. They worked shoulder to shoulder every day, and after a while, the silence between them felt comfortable instead of heavy. Now and then, Sam would almost crack a smile at something she said, and sometimes Ruth Ann would catch him looking at her with a look she just could not place. Something was starting to take root between them. It was a fragile, brand new thing. Ruth Ann was scared to even give it a name. The drought came on hard in the 4th week. Ruth Ann was the first to see it down at the creek. The water line had dropped in just one night. The flow was down to almost nothing. Sam. He came running when he heard her call his name. He took one look at the creek and all the color drained from his face. Crawford. You reckon he put up a dam upstream? He's been threatening to choke it off for years. Sam was already headed for the horses. I've got to go see for myself. I'm going with you. Ruth Ann, I am going. He stared at her for a long second, then gave a firm nod. They rode fast, pushing the horses hard up into the hills where Crawford's land met theirs. And sure enough, there it was. A rough dam, newly built, turning the water away from Sam's property and straight toward Crawford's. Well, son of a gun. Sam's voice was shaking with pure rage. He really went and did it. Is that even legal? No. Well, maybe. I do not know. Sam raked a hand through his hair. Water rights out here are a tangled mess. He will say he is just taking his fair share. I will say he is stealing mine. The sheriff is not going to lift a finger. It will end up in court, drag on for months, and by that time my cattle will be long dead. So, what is our plan? Sam just stared at the dam. Ruth Ann could practically see the gears turning in his head. She saw him weighing his choices and coming up empty every time. We find a way. We find another source of water. Maybe drill a well if we can scrape the money together. He turned his horse back around. Let's go. There is nothing for us to do here. They rode back without a single word passing between them. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Sam worked from sunup to sundown trying to keep the herd alive, hauling water from a pond 2 miles off, and stretching every last drop they had. Ruth Ann worked right there with him, her hands covered in blisters and her back screaming in protest. And every single night, Sam's nightmares got worse. Tamza, Thomas. Ruth Ann stopped trying to sleep through them. She would just lie there in her bed, listening to him fight his way back to the waking world, wondering if she should go to him, and wondering if he would even let her. On the 5th night, she could not bear it any longer. She slipped out of bed, went over to his door, and knocked lightly. Sam? There was no answer, but the struggling sounds had stopped. Sam, I am coming in. She eased the door open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. It was not crying. It was something worse, something deeper. Ruth Ann sat down next to him, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, but not quite touching. You do not have to talk about it. I know, but I am here if you decide you want to. A long quiet stretched out. Then finally his voice came out, raw and broken. It gets worse when things go wrong. The ranch, the water, Crawford. When everything starts to fall apart, I go right back to that field, watching Thomas burn, smelling the smoke, hearing him scream. Ruth Ann felt her heart tighten in her chest. Sam, I could not save him. I tried. Lord, I tried, but that beam was too heavy and the fire was too hot. And his voice broke completely. I left him in there. I ran to save myself. I left my own brother to die. You did not have a choice. There is always a choice. No. Ruth Ann's voice was firm now. There is not. Sometimes the only choice you get is to survive or die right there with them. You chose to live. That is not being a coward. That is being human. Sam finally looked up at her, his eyes wet and just devastated. Elizabeth could never understand it. She told me I was damaged. She said the war had broken something inside me that could never be fixed. He let out a bitter laugh. Maybe she was right. She was wrong. Ruth Ann reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. You are not broken, Sam. You are wounded. There is a difference. Is there, though? Broken means it is beyond repair. Wounded means it can heal. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze. You can heal, but you have to let yourself. They sat there together in the dark for what felt like a lifetime. Not saying a word, just breathing, just being in the same room. At last, Sam's grip on her hand relaxed. His breathing evened out. Thank you, he whispered. Do not thank me just yet. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I know, he almost smiled. But at least I will not have to face it by myself. Ruth Ann went back to her own room, but a change had settled between them. Something big. The next morning, Jake Thornton came riding in at dawn. Ruth Ann heard the horse and came out of the cabin, still yanking on her boots. Sam was already out in the yard talking to a young man who looked like he was about to jump out of his skin. Fire. Jake was saying it started over on Crawford's land, but it is moving this way, and it is moving fast. Ma sent me to give you a warning. The color drained from Sam's face. How far out? About 5 miles. The wind is pushing it south. That is heading straight for our pastures. Sam was already on the move. Ruth Ann, I need you to get the horses out of the barn. Get them into the far corral. Jake, you help me round up as many of the cattle as we can. What about the cabin? If that fire gets to the cabin, we have much bigger problems. Sam grabbed a saddle. Let's move now. Ruth Ann moved faster than she ever had. She got the horses clear, then raced back for the chickens, then helped Sam and Jake push the cattle away from the fire that was coming for them. The smoke got to them first, thick and choking, and it painted the whole sky orange. It is coming over the ridge, Jake yelled. We have got to go. Not yet. Sam was still trying to move a handful of stubborn steers. We cannot lose them, Sam. Ruth Ann grabbed his arm. We have to leave. He looked at her, his eyes wide and frantic. I cannot lose this ranch. This is everything I have left. You have me. The words just tumbled out before she could catch them. You have me, Sam, and I need you to stay alive. Something in his face just broke. Something finally gave way. All right. He swung up onto his horse. All right. Let's ride. They rode hard with the fire roaring right behind them. Ruth Ann could feel the heat on her back. She could hear that awful crackling sound of flames eating up everything they touched. They reached the far ridge just as the fire hit the ranch. Ruth Ann stood there and watched the cabin burst into flames. No. Sam's voice was barely a whisper. No, no, no. He started to ride back toward it. Ruth Ann caught his reins. Sam, stop it. That is my home. That is everything I built, and you will be dead if you go back in there. I do not care. Well, I do. She was crying now, tears carving clean trails through the soot on her face. I care, you stubborn, foolish man. I care. Sam quit fighting her. He just looked at her. The fire was raging behind them. Everything he had spent 10 years building was turning to ash. But he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Ruth Ann, do not you dare leave me. Her voice cracked on the words. Do not you dare die on me. Not now, not when I have, finally. She could not get the rest out. She could not say the words. Sam reached over and took her face in his hands. His palms were calloused and warm and shaking. I am not going anywhere. Promise me, I promise. He kissed her then. It was not a gentle kiss, not careful at all. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like smoke and fear and something that felt an awful lot like hope. Ruth Ann kissed him right back. All around them the fire burned on. It felt like the world was ending. But in that one moment, Ruth Ann did not care about the cabin or the cattle or what came next. She cared about this man, this wounded, stubborn, beautiful man who had given her a chance when nobody else would. When they finally broke apart, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "We will rebuild." "What?" "The cabin, the barn, everything we lost." His voice was steady again, full of resolve. "We will rebuild it together." "You really mean that?" "I mean every word I say to you, Ruth Ann." He pulled back so he could look her in the eye. "I do not know exactly when it happened, but somewhere in these last few weeks you became the most important thing on this entire ranch. More important than the dirt under my feet. More important than the cattle." He took a breath. "More important than the ghosts I have been carrying all this time." Ruth Ann felt fresh tears spill down her cheeks. "Sam, I love you." The words felt like a lightning strike, even to her. "You what?" "I love you, and I am sorry it took a wildfire to make me say it out loud." He almost smiled. "I have never been good with words. You are getting better." She kissed him again, but this time it was softer. It felt like a promise instead of a desperate plea. When they pulled apart, Jake Thornton was making a big show of looking at anything else. "Fire is dying down," he called out. The wind changed direction. Sam turned and looked out at his ranch. The cabin was gone. The barn was hurt, but the fences were still up. And way off in the distance, Ruth Ann could see the cattle moving around, alive. They had been spared because of their frantic escape. "We did not lose everything," she said in a quiet voice. "No." Sam took her by the hand. "We did not lose what truly matters." They rode back down the hill as the smoke began to thin. The damage was bad, but it was not as devastating as it had first looked. The barn would need some serious work, but the main frame was still standing. The root cellar was fine. The wells were still drawing water, and the cattle, most of them anyway, had made it through. Somebody set that fire. Sam's voice was flat and hard. It did not start on its own. Not in that spot. Not spreading that fast. Ruth Ann felt a lump of ice form in her stomach. "Crawford. Can you prove it?" "No, but I know it was him." Sam looked at the charred timbers of his cabin. "He wanted to run me off. He wanted to break my spirit so I would sell the place to him. Did it work?" Sam was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled his shoulders back and stood up straight. "No, it did not work." He turned and looked right at her. "He does not know who he is messing with, either of us." Ruth Ann felt something swell up inside her chest. It was a mix of pride and grit and pure anger. "So what do we do now? First, we rebuild. Then we show Crawford and this whole town that we are not going anywhere." Sam's jaw was set like stone. "And when the time is right, we are going to make him pay for what he did." "How?" "I do not know yet," he said, squeezed her hand tight. "We'll find a way through this together." The sun bled out over the mountains, painting the smoke-choked sky in hues of fire and gold. Ruth Ann was standing in the char of what was supposed to be her new home, holding the hand of a man she had known less than a month. Everything was gone. And yet, everything was just getting started. They made their bed in the barn that first night. Ruth Ann rested on a heap of hay with Sam's arm wrapped around her, the both of them smelling of ash, sweat, and pure weariness. It should have been a hard night. It should have felt like the end of the line. But instead, she felt a powerful sense of safety. "Are you awake?" Sam's voice was a low rumble in his chest. "My eyes won't close." "Me either." He drew her in closer. "I keep seeing all that we lost, and I keep thinking about what we didn't." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "You have more strength than I do, Ruth Ann." "No, I am just more stubborn." He almost let out a laugh, almost. The morning came on sharp and bright. Ruth Ann woke to the sound of hooves, a whole mess of horses coming up fast. Sam was already up, his rifle ready in his hands. "Stay put, not a chance." They walked out of the barn together. Eliza Thornton was at the front of the pack, leading a group of riders. There was Jake, the town blacksmith, 3 other fellas Ruth Ann didn't know, and trailing them were 2 wagons, piled high with fresh lumber and supplies. "We heard what happened," Eliza called out, swinging down from her horse. "Figured y'all could use a hand." Sam's jaw was tight. "Eliza, you don't need to do this. Now you hush, Sam." Eliza's voice was strong but gentle. "We are neighbors. This is just what neighbors do for each other." The blacksmith came forward. "The name is Tom Garrett. We only met for a second, Mrs. Hartwell. I know folks haven't been the friendliest, but no one deserves what that man Crawford did to you." "You're sure it was Crawford?" Ruth Ann had to ask. "Everybody is sure of it." Tom spat on the ground. "The fire started over on his land. It moved way too fast to be an accident. That man has been making enemies for years. This was just the final straw." More wagons pulled in all through the morning. Margaret Sullivan showed up with food. The Reverend came with prayers and two strong arms. Folks Ruth Ann had never even laid eyes on before came with tools and wood and a simple will to help. By lunchtime, the frame of a new cabin was already standing. Ruth Ann worked with the women, cooking for the men, hauling water, and doing whatever else she could. Her hands were blistered raw all over again. Her back was aching something fierce, but she didn't stop. "You are pushing yourself too much," Margaret said to her softly during a quick rest. "I am fine. You are pale as a ghost, honey, and you almost passed out twice this morning." Margaret's eyes got real narrow. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" "I cannot remember. That is just what I thought." Margaret put a warm biscuit in her hands. "Eat this, and sit down for a minute. This work will still be here." Ruth Ann ate the biscuit, but she did not rest. Sam found her at sundown sitting on a stack of lumber and just staring at the bones of their new home. "You should get inside the barn. It is getting chilly out here." "I just wanted to see it." Ruth Ann kept her eyes on the frame, wanting to believe it was really happening. Sam sat down next to her and took her hand. "It is real. We are going to be all right." "Are we really?" She finally turned her head to look at him. "Crawford is still out there. He still wants your land. What is to stop him from trying this again?" "Me." Sam's voice turned hard as iron. "I am going to stop him. How?" "I do not know yet, but I will figure it out." Ruth Ann wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him, but a deep fear was taking root inside her. The next week flew by in a whirlwind of building. The new cabin started to look like a home, smaller than the first one, but built to last. The community was there every single day, working until the sun went down and refusing to take a dime. "You would do the same for us," Eliza told her when Ruth Ann tried to thank her. "That is just how it is out here. We survive by sticking together, or we do not survive at all." But Crawford was not done with them. Ruth Ann was in town picking up supplies when she heard the whispering. "Did you hear about that Hartwell woman? What about her?" Someone was saying she got run out of Boston for some kind of trouble. Ruth Ann went still. She turned around real slow. Two women were standing by the dry goods. Their heads were close together. Their voices were low, but not quite low enough. "What kind of trouble?" "The worst kind there is. She went after a man, tried to get him in her bed, and when he turned her down..." "That is a lie." The women jumped and spun around. Ruth Ann walked right up to them, her heart hammering in her chest, her hands trembling. "That is a lie, and I want you to tell me who told it to you." The women shot each other a look. One of them, older and a bit bolder, spoke up. "Mr. Crawford, he mentioned it. Said he heard it from a friend back east. Said we should all be aware of the kind of woman Sam Hartwell brought to live among us." Ruth Ann felt all the color drain from her face. "Crawford?" "Of course it was him. The truth," Ruth Ann said, her voice shaking but clear, "is that I worked as a housekeeper in Boston. My employer's son tried to force himself on me. I fought back. His mother decided to believe her son instead of me." The women just stared at her. "I was blamed for something I did not do. I lost my job and my good name, so I came out here hoping I could start over." Ruth Ann held her head up high. "You can believe what you want to. I know the truth, and so does God." She turned on her heel and walked right out of that store. Her hands did not stop shaking until she was almost all the way home. Sam knew something was wrong the second she came through the door. "What happened?" "Crawford." Ruth Ann set the supplies down on the table with trembling hands. "He is spreading lies about Boston, about what happened to me there." Sam's face grew dark and dangerous. "What exactly is he saying?" "The lie, the same one that wrecked my life before." Ruth Ann could feel the tears coming. She fought them down. He is trying to turn the whole town against me, against the both of us. That son of a Sam. But he was already snatching his hat and heading out. Sam, stop! He froze, but he did not turn around. What do you expect me to do, Ruth Ann? Just let him ruin you? Let him get away with it? No, I want you to use your head. She walked over to him, placing a hand on his arm. He wants you to come storming after him. He wants you to do something foolish so he can get you locked up or shot. Do not give him what he wants. Sam stood there stiff as a board, every muscle pulled tight with rage. I cannot just stand here and do nothing. Then do. We need a smart plan. We have to find proof and build a solid case. That is how we make him pay the right way. The law is not made for folks like us. You know that as well as I do. Then we will make it work for us. Ruth Ann gave his arm a gentle squeeze. I did not survive everything back in Boston just to watch you get shot down in a gunfight. Please, Sam. I am begging you to think this through. A long, quiet moment hung in the air. Finally, Sam's tense shoulders began to relax. You are right. You are always right. He turned to her, his eyes full of love. But I am not about to let this go. I know you are not. We will figure this out, you and me. Sam pulled her close, holding her tightly in his arms. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I should have said it sooner. I should have told you every single day. Tell me now. I love you. I love you. I love you. Ruth Ann closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her like a warm rain. They would find a way to get through this. They had no other choice. The answer to their prayers came from a place they never expected. Jake Thornton rode in 3 days later, looking wild-eyed and completely out of breath. I found something. You have got to see this. They followed him to the edge of Crawford's land, staying low and hidden in the thick brush. Jake pointed to a clearing where 2 men were busy at work. Watch this. Ruth Ann watched them closely. The men were building some kind of structure right next to the creek. Another dam. Sam's voice was a low growl, full of anger. No, look a little closer. Sam narrowed his eyes. A moment later, his whole expression changed. That is kerosene. They are storing kerosene. A whole lot of it, Jake confirmed. I followed Crawford's foreman just yesterday. He bought 6 barrels from a trader who was passing through town. He claimed it was for lanterns, but nobody needs that much kerosene just for some lanterns. He is planning to start another fire. That is what I figured, Jake said, nodding at them both. But here is the important part. I wrote down the dates. I wrote down exactly what I saw. I also got the name of the trader. He is willing to testify against Crawford if we pay him enough. Hope surged in Ruth Ann's chest. That is real evidence. It is a good start. Sam was already thinking, his strategic mind kicking into gear. We are going to need more. We have to catch him in the act. How do we do that? We lay a trap. Sam's eyes locked with Ruth Ann's. We will make him believe we are vulnerable. We will make him think we are just about to break. He will make his move, and when he does, we will be ready and waiting for him. That sounds mighty dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. Sam took her hands in his. But it is a whole lot better than waiting around for him to burn us out of our home again. Ruth Ann thought about Boston, about waiting for things to get better when they only got worse, and about doing nothing while her whole life fell apart around her. Okay, she said, her voice firm. Let us do it. They spread the rumor very carefully, telling only a few people they trusted that Sam was having a hard time, that the fire had truly broken his spirit, and that Ruth Ann was even thinking about leaving him and going back east. The whispers reached Crawford within a week. Ruth Ann knew it worked because Margaret Sullivan told her he was in the general store just yesterday, smiling like a cat that had gotten into the cream. He asked if it was true that Sam was giving up. He asked if the land might be for sale soon. What did you say to him? I told him I did not know a thing about Sam Hartwell's business. Margaret paused for a moment, but I did not bother to correct his thinking either. Good. Margaret studied her friend's face. You are planning something, are you not? Be careful, Ruth Ann. Crawford has no conscience at all. If he thinks for a second that you are a threat, he will come after you himself. Let him try. That night, Ruth Ann told Sam about her conversation with Margaret. He nodded his head slowly. It is working. He thinks we are weak. Sam was cleaning his rifle, his movements careful and precise. Jake is watching his property every night. When they make their move, we are going to know about it. And then we will stop them and get witnesses and find all the proof we need. Sam looked up at her. We are going to put Daniel Crawford behind bars, right where he belongs. Do you really think that is possible? I think we have to try. Sam set down his rifle and walked over to her. I am so tired of being afraid of him, Ruth Ann. Tired of waiting for his next attack. If we are going to build a life for ourselves here, we have to put an end to this. Ruth Ann nodded. She understood completely. But later that night, as she lay in Sam's arms in their half-built cabin, she made a promise to herself. If Crawford came for them, she would not hide. She would not run away. She would stand and fight. The waiting was the hardest part of it all. Days turned into a week. Ruth Ann tried to go about her daily chores, but every single moment felt heavy with a sense of dread. Every sound of hoofbeats in the distance made her heart pound in her chest. Every shadow looked like a threat. And then one morning, everything changed completely. Ruth Ann woke up feeling very sick. She ran to the outhouse and vomited until there was nothing left inside her. Sam found her there, looking pale and shaking. You are sick. I am fine. You are not fine. You have been tired for weeks now. You fainted 2 times last month, and now this. Sam's eyes searched her face, full of concern. Ruth Ann, what is going on? She looked at him, her husband, the man who had given her a new life, and she knew she could not lie to him. I think I'm pregnant. Sam went completely still, as if he was carved from stone. What? I'm not completely sure, but all the signs are there. Ruth Ann's hand gently went to her stomach. I think I am carrying your child. Sam just stared at her, his face impossible to read. Then suddenly he was on his knees in front of her, his hands covering hers on her belly, his eyes filling up with tears. A baby, maybe. Probably. Ruth Ann felt her own tears start to fall. Is this okay? Is this okay? Sam let out a broken laugh, a sound full of pure wonder. Ruth Ann, this is everything. This is more than I ever thought I would have again. Again. A shadow passed over Sam's face. Mary, my first wife, she died in childbirth. The baby died too. Ruth Ann felt a cold chill run down her spine. Sam, I never thought I would get another chance. I thought God was punishing me for something. He pressed his forehead gently against her belly. But now you are here, and we are going to have a child. You are not afraid. I am terrified. He looked up at her. But I am also happier than I have been in 10 years, maybe in my whole life. Ruth Ann pulled him up to his feet and kissed him with all her heart. We are going to be parents. We are going to be a family. The moment was absolutely perfect and pure. And then Jake Thornton came riding in at a full gallop, his horse kicking up dust. Tonight, he yelled. They are making their move tonight. Everything happened in a rush after that. Sam grabbed his rifle, his pistol, and extra ammunition. Ruth Ann tried to go with him, but he stopped her right at the door. No, Sam. You are carrying my child. I am not going to risk you. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Stay here. Eliza is on her way to stay with you. And what if something happens to you? It will not. You cannot promise me that. Sam took her face gently in his hands. I can promise that I will do everything in my power to come back to you, to both of you. He kissed her deeply, a kiss full of desperation. Then he was gone. Ruth Ann stood in the doorway and watched him ride away, her hand pressed against her belly, her heart screaming in fear. Eliza arrived an hour later. He has got 6 men with him. she said without any small talk. Jake, Tom Garrett, the Reverend, and 3 other men who have had enough of Crawford. Is that going to be enough? It will have to be. They waited. The hours crawled by as slowly as a snail. Ruth Ann paced, then sat, then paced some more. Every little noise made her jump. Every moment of silence felt heavy with danger. Midnight came and went, then 1 in the morning, then 2. Something is wrong, Ruth Ann said, her voice trembling. They should have been back by now. These things can take time, or something went terribly wrong. Ruth Ann grabbed her coat. I am going. Ruth Ann, no. I cannot just sit here and wait. Ruth Ann's voice cracked with emotion. He is my husband. He is the father of my child. I have to know what happened. Eliza stood up, her face a mix of fear and understanding. Then I am coming with you. They rode as fast as they could through the dark night, following the route Jake had described. Ruth Ann's heart pounded against her ribs with every stride of her horse. Her mind was filled with terrible images. Sam wounded, Sam dead, Sam burning just like his first cabin had burned. Then she heard the gunshots, there. Eliza pointed toward a flickering light off in the distance. They urged their horses to go even faster. When they reached the top of the ridge, Ruth Ann saw the whole scene laid out before them. The stores of kerosene were on fire. Men were scattered all over the clearing, some fighting, some running away. And right in the middle of it all, Sam was struggling with Daniel Crawford. The 2 men were locked in a brutal fight. Sam. Ruth Ann was off her horse before she even realized what she was doing, running straight toward the fight. Crawford saw her coming. His eyes widened in surprise, and he shoved Sam aside and pulled out a pistol, pointing it straight at Ruth Ann. Stop right there. Ruth Ann froze in her tracks, her breath caught in her throat. Crawford, do not do this. Sam's voice was filled with desperation. This is between us. Not anymore, it is not. Crawford's smile was ugly and full of victory. Drop your weapon, Hartwell, or your pretty wife gets a bullet. Sam hesitated for a moment, looking at Ruth Ann. She shook her head slightly, begging him not to. But Sam dropped his rifle. Now the pistol. Sam dropped that too. Crawford laughed a nasty laugh. You are pathetic. All this trouble for a woman. A used-up Irish girl that nobody else wanted. He motioned with the gun. Come over here, Mrs. Hartwell. Let us see what all the fuss is about. Ruth Ann did not move an inch. I said, come here. No. Crawford's face twisted in anger. What did you just say to me? I said no. Ruth Ann's voice was steady, even though she was terrified. You are not going to shoot me, Crawford. There are witnesses everywhere. You would hang for murder. There will not be any witnesses left when I am done with you all. Yes, there will. Ruth Ann pointed behind him. Look. Crawford turned his head. Half the town was riding in, men carrying torches and rifles. And at the very front of the group was the sheriff, Crawford's own cousin. It is over, Daniel, the sheriff called out, his voice strong and clear. Something's smart. Put down that gun. You cannot be serious. You are my family. You started fires, you tried to steal our water, and you threatened a pregnant woman. The sheriff's voice was ice cold. Family does not mean what you think it means. Crawford's face twisted with rage, then disbelief, and finally, pure despair. He let the gun fall. The sheriff's men moved in fast. They had Crawford in chains in just a few minutes, and Sam was already running to Ruth Ann, pulling her in his arms and holding her like he might never let her go. Do not ever do that again, he said, his voice muffled in her hair. Do not you ever put yourself in that kind of danger. I could not let him kill you. I would have found another way. You did not have to. We found it together. Sam pulled back to look at her face. You told him you were pregnant in front of everybody. Was I supposed to keep it a secret? No, it is just... Sam let out a shaky laugh. I just wanted to be there when you told folks. You were there. I was scared to death. Me too. Ruth Ann cupped his face in her hands. But we won, Sam. We really, truly won. Sam kissed her then. It was soft and sweet, and filled with all kinds of promise. All around them the night was alive with torches and voices and the sound of justice. Finally being served. Crawford was hauled away in chains. His land would be taken. His crimes would be judged in a real court, not one run by his cousin. And Ruth Ann just stood there in her husband's arms, one hand resting on her belly, watching the sun come up over Montana. They had lost nearly everything. They had built it all back, and now they would build so much more together. The trial went on for 3 long days. Ruth Ann sat in the front row of that courthouse, her hand held tight in Sam's, watching Daniel Crawford answer for every wrong thing he had done. The kerosene, the dam, the fires, the threats. One witness after another took the stand. People who had been too scared to say a word before, but were now brave, because Crawford had fallen. The verdict came down on the 3rd afternoon. Guilty. Crawford's face turned white as a sheet. His lawyer jumped up to object. The judge shut him down with just one look. Daniel Crawford, I sentence you to 15 years in the territorial prison. May God have mercy on your soul, because this community surely will not. The courtroom just exploded. Ruth Ann felt Sam's grip get even tighter on her hand. She looked over at him and saw he had tears in his eyes. "It is over," she whispered. "It is finally over." They walked out of the courthouse and into the bright sunlight. It seemed like the entire town was out there waiting for them. Margaret Sullivan, Eliza Thornton, Jake, Tom Garrett, the Reverend, and dozens of other folks, and they were all clapping. Ruth Ann felt a blush creep up her neck. She had never been applauded for anything in her whole life. "Say a few words," someone shouted from the crowd. Sam held up a hand. Everyone went quiet. "I am not much of a talker," he started. "Y'all know that, but I want to say something all the same." He took a breath, collecting his thoughts. 3 months ago, a woman got off the stagecoach in this town. She had come 2,000 miles with nothing more than a carpet bag and a little bit of hope. Most of you did not trust her. Some of you were downright mean to her. Ruth Ann felt all the eyes on her. She just lifted her chin a little higher. But she stayed. She put in the work. She proved who she was every single day. Sam's voice got a little rough. And when Crawford came at us, when it felt like everything was turning to ash, she stood her ground. She did not run. She did not break. He turned to look right at her. "Ruth Ann Brennan came to this place looking for a new beginning, but she ended up giving me something more. She gave me a reason to keep on fighting. She gave me hope back when I had forgotten what hope even felt like." Sam took her hand. He raised it up high for everyone to see. "This woman is my wife. She is carrying my child, and there is not a single thing in this whole world I am more proud of than standing right here beside her." The crowd roared. Ruth Ann couldn't hold back the tears this time. She didn't even try. Eliza pushed her way through the folks and wrapped her in a fierce hug. "Welcome home, Ruth Ann. Finally and for real. Thank you. Don't you thank me. You earned this." The weeks that came after were the happiest Ruth Ann had ever known. The cabin was finished. It was bigger than the old one, with 2 bedrooms and a real kitchen. The neighbors had added little things Sam never would have thought of. Curtains on the windows, a rug in front of the fireplace, a rocking chair for the nursery. Ruth Ann just cried when she saw that rocking chair. "Eliza made it," Sam said quietly. "Same pattern as the one her grandma brought all the way from Virginia. It's beautiful. So are you." Ruth Ann looked right at him. After everything they had been through, hearing those words still made her forget to breathe. "You mean that?" "I mean every single thing I say to you." Sam walked over to her, put his hands on her round belly. "Have I told you today that I love you twice?" "Not enough." He kissed her on the forehead. "I love you. I love you. I love you. That's 5 times now." "Still not enough." The pregnancy moved along. Ruth Ann got rounder and more uncomfortable. Her back ached and her feet swelled up. She complained all the time, and Sam just listened, never making a judgment. He'd rub her feet at night and get up to bring her water, never once making her feel like she was a bother. "You are too good to me," she told him one evening. "I am exactly as good as you deserve." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant. Sam put her foot down and looked at her real serious. Ruth Ann, for 10 years I was just waiting to die. Just going through the motions, carrying a guilt so heavy I could barely draw a breath. Sam, let me finish. He took both her hands in his. You changed all that, not by doing anything special. Just by being here, just by being real, by making me be real too. I didn't make you do anything, you did. You made me feel again and hope again and believe that maybe I deserved good things too. His voice cracked. I spent all that time thinking God was punishing me. For surviving when Thomas died, for not saving Mary and our baby. But then you came and I realized something. What? Maybe God wasn't punishing me at all. Maybe he was just waiting. Waiting till I was ready. Waiting till you were ready. Sam pressed his forehead against hers. We found each other, Ruth Ann, against every odd there is. Doesn't that feel like grace to you? Ruth Ann thought about Boston, about the pantry, the church basement, the desperate letters, and the 2,000 miles of fear and hope. Yes, she whispered to herself, this is what grace feels like. The baby came 3 weeks too soon. Ruth Ann woke up in the dark of night, a sharp pain cutting through her belly and stealing her breath. Sam was right by her side in an instant. What is it? The baby, she gasped. The baby is coming, but it is too early. Well, you tell the baby that. Ruth Ann saw Sam's face turn pale. She watched the fear and old memories fill up his eyes. Sam, look right at me. He did. This is not Mary. This is not that night. I am going to be just fine. You cannot know that for sure. I know that I am stronger than I have ever been. I know I have you. I know Eliza is 5 miles down the road, and she has delivered half the babies in this valley. Ruth Ann squeezed his hand hard as another wave of pain hit. Now you go get her, and do not you dare fall to pieces on me. Sam gave her a hard kiss. Then he was out the door. The hours that came next were the longest in Ruth Ann's whole life. Eliza got there just before the sun came up, calm as could be, and took charge right away. She sent Jake into town to fetch the doctor, but she figured he would not make it in time. This baby is coming fast, she told Ruth Ann. You are doing great. It hurts. I know it does, honey, I know. But you are almost there. Sam never left Ruth Ann's side through it all. He held her hand, let her squeeze his fingers to bits without a word of complaint, and wiped the sweat from her brow. I cannot do this, Ruth Ann panted after what felt like days. Yes, you can. I cannot. Ruth Ann. Sam's voice was sharp enough to cut through her panic. Look at me. She met his eyes. You came 2,000 miles all by yourself. You made it through Boston. You made it through Crawford. You have made it through everything this life has thrown at you. His eyes were burning with a fire that said he was sure of it. This is just one more thing, and you are going to make it through this too. How do you know? Because you are the toughest person I have ever known, and because I will not let you go. Something inside Ruth Ann changed right then. The fear was still there, but it stepped aside to make room for something else. It was determination. It was pure stubbornness. It was the same fire that had brought her clear across a continent. All right, she said. All right, let us get this done. 2 hours later, their daughter was born. Eliza gently placed the baby into Ruth Ann's arms. So tiny, so perfect, and crying with a healthy set of lungs. She is just beautiful, Eliza said, with tears welling in her own eyes. Absolutely beautiful. Ruth Ann looked down at her little girl. This tiny miracle, this living proof that a life could start over, that having hope was not a foolish thing, that you really could get a second chance. Sam. He was just staring at the baby as if he had never seen anything so precious in his whole life. When he finally spoke, his voice was just a whisper. She has your hair. She has your eyes. She is perfect. She is ours. Sam reached out a hand, touching the baby's cheek with one of his rough fingers. The baby grabbed onto it and held on tight. "Hello there, little one," he said in a soft voice. "I am your daddy, and I promise you I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know just how much you are loved." Ruth Ann felt the tears run down her own face. They were good tears, the very best kind of tears. "What should we name her?" she asked him. Sam thought about it for a second. "Grace. We will call her Grace, because that is what she is. That is what you are. That is what this whole new life is." He looked at Ruth Ann, his eyes filled with wonder. "Grace we did not earn. Grace we did not deserve. But it is a grace we were given anyway." "Grace Hartwell." Ruth Ann said the name out loud. "I like it, Grace it is." Then the doctor showed up, a whole 2 hours too late. He looked over Ruth Ann and the baby and said they were both as healthy as could be. "You are a lucky man, Hartwell," he said as he was leaving. "Do not you forget it." "Trust me," Sam said. "I never will." That first year of Grace's life went by in a happy, tired blur. Ruth Ann had never put in so much work in all her born days. What with the feeding, the changing, and the soothing all on top of the regular ranch chores, the cooking, and the endless work that Montana living demanded. But truth be told, she had never felt a happiness so pure. Grace was an easy baby, always cheerful and full of curiosity, captivated by everything from the chickens scratching in the yard to the big sky sunsets to the lines on her daddy's face. Sam was just plumb crazy about her, toting her everywhere he went, talking to her like she was a grown-up, and constantly nodding off with her asleep right on his chest. "You're going to spoil that child rotten," Ruth Ann told him one evening. "That's the plan," he'd say. "She needs to learn to sleep in her own crib. She will in her own time." Sam kissed the top of Grace's fuzzy red head. "But she's only this little for a little while. I'm not about to miss a single minute of it." Ruth Ann wanted to argue the point, but she couldn't. Not when she knew in her heart she felt the exact same way. The community had finally wrapped its arms around them for good. Margaret Sullivan brought a covered dish over every single week. Eliza would stop in just to give Ruth Ann a spell. The ladies from the church got together a quilting circle and stitched Grace a blanket so beautiful, Ruth Ann just broke down and cried when she saw it. "You belong here," Margaret told her one afternoon. "I know I wasn't too welcoming when you first arrived, but you've proven your worth 10 times over. Thank you. Don't you thank me. You did the hard work. I'm just finally smart enough to see it." When Grace was about 6 months old, a letter came in the mail from Boston. Ruth Ann recognized that fancy handwriting in a heartbeat. "Mrs. Whitmore." Her hand started to shake as she opened it up. "What is it?" Sam asked, seeing the look that came over her face. Ruth Ann read the letter. Then she read it again, and a funny kind of laugh bubbled up out of her. "What? What in the world is so funny? Charles Whitmore?" Ruth Ann's voice was full of disbelief. He tried to get forceful with another one of the servant girls, but this one had a brother, a big brother, who beat Charles nearly half to death. "Good. That is not even the best part." Ruth Ann held up the letter. "Mrs. Whitmore is writing to apologize. She says she now understands I was telling the truth. She wants to restore my good name." Sam's expression grew hard as stone. "She wants to soothe her own guilty conscience, is what you mean." "Probably." Ruth Ann looked at the letter, at the elegant handwriting that had once put the fear of God into her. "But it does not matter. What do you mean?" "I do not need her apology." Ruth Ann walked over to the fireplace. "I do not need forgiveness from Boston. I do not need anything from that world ever again." She dropped the letter right into the flames. Sam watched it turn to ash. "You sure about that?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my entire life." Ruth Ann turned to look him in the eye. "My life is right here with you, with Grace, with this ranch and these neighbors and this land. And if they never believe you back east, then they just do not believe me." Ruth Ann just shrugged. "I know the truth. You know the truth. And our daughter will grow up knowing the truth. That is all that matters." Sam walked over to her and pulled her in for a hug. "I love you, Ruth Ann Hartwell. I love you too. even when you are spoiling our daughter rotten, especially when I am spoiling our daughter." Grace made a happy little gurgle from her blanket on the floor. Ruth Ann laughed and went to scoop her up. This was her family, her home, her whole life. Everything else was just noise from far away. The years went by. Grace grew from a baby into a toddler, and then into a little girl who had her mama's red hair and her daddy's stubborn chin. She learned how to ride a horse before she learned how to read, could wrangle a chicken by the age of 3, and had her father wrapped completely around her little finger. "She is going to be trouble," Eliza predicted with a smile. "She is already trouble," Ruth Ann agreed. "The very best kind." More children came along. They had a son they named Thomas, after Sam's brother. Then a daughter they named Mary, for the wife Sam had lost so long ago. Every single one was a blessing. Each one was a reminder that life keeps going, that love just grows bigger, that family is something you build by choice just as much as by blood. The ranch did well. They grew the herd, bought up more land, and hired some hands to help with all the work. Sam's nightmares started to fade away, coming around less and less, until one day they just stopped for good. "I think Thomas would be mighty proud of you," Ruth Ann told him one night. "Why would you say that? Because you survived it all, because you built something good out of the ashes, because you did not let the war take you down with it." Sam was quiet for a long while. "I used to think that surviving was like betraying him, like I was supposed to suffer forever, because he was gone. And now? Now, I think maybe surviving was the whole point of it. Maybe that is what he would have wanted for me all along." Sam looked over at her. "You taught me that. You and Grace and Thomas and Mary, you all taught me that living was not a betrayal. It was the whole reason for everything." Ruth Ann took his hand in hers. "I am just glad you finally see it that way. I am glad you were patient enough to wait for me to figure it all out." When Grace turned 18, she told them she was leaving. "I want to go see the world," she said to them at the dinner table. "I want to go to school. I want to be more than just some rancher's wife." Ruth Ann felt her heart. "So you are really heading out?" "Not for good, Mama. Just for a little spell." Grace took hold of her mother's hands. "You are the one who taught me to have courage. You showed me how to take a leap of faith. How could I do anything else?" Ruth Ann looked at her girl so full of fire and beauty, the child she had brought up, and for a moment she saw herself 30 years earlier, holding tight to a worn-out satchel and walking toward a life she could not yet see. "You are right," she finally said. "You are absolutely right. You are not mad. I am scared to death, but I am also so proud it could burst my heart." Ruth Ann gave Grace's hands a firm squeeze. "Go on and see what this world has to offer. Go be somebody special, and when you feel it is time, you come on home. We will be right here waiting." Grace departed on a bright September morning. Ruth Ann stood out on the porch watching the stage until it was just a speck on the horizon. Sam came and put his arm around her shoulders, her heart aching with sadness and swelling with pride all at once. "She will be all right," Sam said in a low voice. "I know you raised her right." "We raised her right," Ruth Ann corrected, leaning against him. "Do you remember when you found me at that dusty stage station, just a scared and lonely girl, certain no one on earth would ever have me? I remember. You changed my whole world, Sam. You took a gamble on me when nobody else would have. You stood by me when everyone else called me a liar. You did the very same for me." Sam kissed the crown of her head. "You saw a broken man and you loved him all the same. You helped me gather up all the shattered parts of my life. We put each other back together again. That is what being partners is all about, is it not?" Sam gently turned her to look at him. "That is what love is. It is two folks picking each other, day in and day out. Through the lean times and the fat times, through wildfires and high water and kids growing up and moving on. Through it all. Through it all." Ruth Ann gazed at the man she had married 30 years back. His hair was silver now, and his face was etched with lines from the sun and time. His hands were calloused and rough from a lifetime of hard labor. But his eyes, they had not changed one bit. They were still clear and sure, and filled with a love that had only grown stronger over the years. "You are still the prettiest thing I have ever seen," he said, as if he could read her mind plain as day. "I am old. You are beautiful." Sam cupped her face in his hands. "You were beautiful the day you got off that stage. You were beautiful the day you told Crawford to go to perdition. You were beautiful the day you brought Grace and Thomas and Mary into this world. And you will be beautiful the day I draw my last breath, and every single day until then." He gave her a small smile. "That is not just sweet talk, Ruth Ann. That is the God's honest truth." She kissed him then, a kiss that was gentle and sweet, and held all the weight of 30 years of a life shared together. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more." "That is a tall order. Maybe so, but I reckon I will keep trying all the same." They stood there together on the porch of the ranch house they had built with their own hands, watching the sun dip low over the Montana landscape. Behind them, the house was alive with memories. The kitchen where Ruth Ann finally got the hang of her cast-iron skillet. The bedroom where 4 babies had drawn their first breaths. The hearth where Sam used to read poems to them on long, cold winter nights. In front of them, the future stretched out, a wide-open country full of unknowns and promise. More years to spend side by side, more happiness and more heartache, and more days to decide they still belong together. "Any regrets?" Sam asked her. Ruth Ann took a moment. She really considered it, thinking about Boston and the whole mess that had sent her running. She thought about that frantic letter she had mailed to a man she had never met, about the 2,000 miles of pure fear and stubborn hope, about all that she had left behind and everything she had gained. "No," she said at last, "not one. Not even my coffee. That coffee was dreadful." "You got better." "I got better at a whole lot of things," Ruth Ann said with a smile. "But the very best thing I ever did was write back to your advertisement. The best thing I ever did was take a gamble on a broken-down cowboy with sorrow in his eyes and a dream of making something that would last. And the best thing I ever did," Sam added, "was send for a woman who had the grit to speak the truth." Sam pulled her in tight. "We didn't just find each other, Ruth Ann. We saved each other. We built this whole life from the ground up, put together a family, the best darn family a man could ever dream of." The sun started its slow dip behind the mountains, splashing the sky with colors of gold and rose. Off in the distance, you could hear the lowing of cattle settling in for the night. The birds started singing their evening songs, and the whole world seemed to take a deep breath for another peaceful Montana night. Ruth Ann Hartwell stood there, wrapped in her husband's arms, and felt a wholeness she never knew was possible. She had come to this place just hoping for a second chance. What she found was a brand new life. She found real love, a true family, a reason to be, a place to belong. She found her own self. And when it was all said and done, that was worth more than anything. 30 years ago, a woman carrying a beat-up old suitcase had stepped off a stagecoach right here in Copper Creek, Montana. She was scared clear through, all alone, and dead certain that nobody would ever see any good in her. But one man did. One man looked at her with honest eyes and called her beautiful. Not because of her face, but because of who she was on the inside. Because of her grit, her honest heart, and that stubborn way she refused to let the world's meanness decide who she was. And that single thing had made all the difference. Ruth Ann looked up at Sam, her husband, her partner, her home. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked. "For everything," she said. "For believing in me, for giving me a chance, and for loving me just the way I am." "Well, now, you never need to thank me for that." Sam kissed her forehead. "Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did." Ruth Ann smiled and let him hold her close as the stars began to pop out one by one in the big sky. She had spent her whole life with people telling her she was not enough. She had crossed this whole country to prove them wrong. And she surely did it, not by becoming somebody else, not by changing the woman she was, but by finding a place where the truth of her heart mattered more than the lies people told. By finding a man who saw her clear as day and loved her completely, and by building a life that was good and real and all her own. Ruth Ann Brennan had shown up in Montana with nothing but a pocket full of hope and a heart full of shame. But Ruth Ann Hartwell would leave this world one day, surrounded by nothing but love. Now that, right there, was a story worth telling. That was a life worth living. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.